I'm very excited today because we are leveling up Child Life on Call with a co-host. And our guest co-host today is Sehreen. And if you have listened to the podcast before, she was episode 112 or 113. I need to go back and check my math on that. But I so am just in awe of what she has created as a female founder, as a mom, as a woman. So I invited her here to be one of our hosts for today's episode. So Sehreen, if you want to introduce yourself to our listeners, and they may have heard of you before if they've listened.
Thank you, Katie. I am equally as honored to be here with you, in part because, as you know, I think child life specialists have a special place in my heart. So I am Sehreen Noorali. I'm the co-founder of Sleuth, which is a parent-built children's database that helps parents of similar children get the information and data they wish they had earlier to make decisions. And I live in New York. My co-founder, who's a data scientist, is here too. And I have two little girls, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. And my younger one has some medical needs that have immersed me quite deep into the medical and therapy world.
Yes, absolutely. And we chat with Michelle in just a few minutes. And the common denominator there was that both Sehreen and Michelle have had their fair share of time in the rehab setting. And that's actually where Sehreen told me that she met a child life specialist. And I'm always honored when we get to be a part of a family story, right? Because there's all of these team members who are so smart and their expertise is so wild and so specific. But a lot of times what I hear from families is like, we got to go to the playroom and that made a big difference. And yeah, I don't know if you had that experience with a child life specialist.
I had that experience yesterday. I mean, we went back to the hospital to get an MRI, and it's like, I kind of walked into the hospital that we had been in, long term. And someone asked me how I was doing. I was like, I feel like I'm having a mini heart attack, right? It's like you have anxiety. Your child feels your anxiety. I left my coffee mug somewhere. It's like, you're not really working. And then you have this child life specialist come in and just almost take charge of your child's emotional health. And that helps you regulate and reset. And so we knew the toys that they had. We asked for the toys that we had last time. And her name was Alex, who came in, and she showed a picture of the MRI room. And she asked my daughter all these questions that I was like, even as informed as I am, and experienced as I am, my brain in that moment of panic could not do that for my daughter, but the child life specialist did. And she helped me. She interpreted, my daughter went to the MRI and she came out, and Alex came and talked to me, and she's like, Dr. So-and-so is really experienced. It's like, I find that Dr. So-and-so, sometimes people think that Dr. So-and-so is abrasive, but Dr. So-and-so has actually been here for 30 years. And she explained him to me. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that. Like, you gave me background on someone, like, I feel so much more reassured right now. And so they play this kind of continuation of care role that I wish more people knew about. I'm a huge fan.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. So I love hearing that. Oh, because that is it's the collaborative approach. And I actually think it's good for, if you're not a child life specialist, but you're a healthcare professional, to hear that we talk the team up a lot. And we want parents to know that we work in this hospital and we continue to support kids and families because we believe in the team that we work with. And giving insight about personal characteristics of physicians that you may interact with is really huge for parents, because if you didn't know that, you could have been caught off guard, and that could have stolen some space in your brain that could be used for more important things.
Oh, I could extol virtues of child life specialists all day. One of the things one day I would love to do with you is, I used to try to interview the child life specialists that we worked with, but I think that there was a kind of like patient health work or whatever. And I was like, why did you become this? Like, I'm so interested.
Yes.
It's such a kind of intimate, vulnerable relationship you build that someone is seeing your family, and you feel so grateful for someone to, in the moment. I think one of the things that child life specialists have done for us is they've seen us right? In a moment where you're constantly being bombarded with information, the child life specialist stopped and they saw us as a parent and a family. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful things someone can do for you when you're in such a moment of kind of stress.
Yeah. Oh, and I hear you saying that like you wish you knew a little bit about the care team, right? And the child life specialist about like, you got to see our underwear, like let me see yours, right? It's like so you funny. See so much of us at these vulnerable moments. It's actually why on the mobile app that we're piloting, we have a whole Health Hero section. And within the Health Hero profiles, we have the care team submit information, but it's not about like where they went to school or this resume. It's like, what's your favorite color, your favorite movie, your favorite quote? And it's surprising about how connected you can feel to someone by learning kind of questions you wouldn't normally ask in that time. But
totally. Because
I love that. It humanizes us. Exactly. That's all we are just one human with another.
Exactly.
So I am so happy that you're here today. We're going to get to Michelle. And Sehreen, I'm just so glad that you get to join us on this little adventure today. And I'm so grateful to Michelle for sharing so generously and vulnerably with us.
Thanks for having us. Michelle, it's so nice to meet you. I'm really excited to learn more. And if you could share with us a little bit more about your story and your family, that would be wonderful.
So I have 5 kids, my newest being just a month old. And my husband and I have been married 10 years. I stay home. He's a firefighter and a paramedic. And before having kids, I was a deaf interpreter and worked with special needs kids and adults. So our 3 older girls are all typically developing and didn't have issues. And then I was pregnant with my son, Gideon, and we were really excited to have a boy after 3 girls. And everything was really normal with his pregnancy and everything. And then once he was born at 24 hours, we realized there was an issue. His oxygen was really low. And so it's really, it turned our whole world upside down, having that experience, because we just didn't see it coming. We didn't have any red flags or anything. And now I have a 1-month-old girl too. So just one boy and with all of his complex needs. So now I stay home with the kids. We homeschool. We run a small farm, and we have a nurse here with us. I have a nurse here full time with me too, helping.
It sounds like you're the manager of like a fully functioning business, and I feel like that's just in my mind because I'm trying to build a business. But I commend you so much on a farm and a house and 5 kids and navigating the healthcare system, which is incredibly challenging. Talk to us a little bit about that kind of 24-hour moment and being in the hospital, and I guess what worked well as far as what you learned, and looking back now, what do you wish you would have known at that or had at that moment?
So at that 24-hour moment, we've had all of our kids planned at home. And so we were home. My midwife came back over to the house, and Gideon, he was pink. I say that because everyone, even in those beginning days, were like, well, he looks good. He doesn't look to be under distress. His breathing looked normal. My husband also has a medical background. He worked in a peds ER. And, the only thing we could go on was that he wasn't eating very well and he wasn't interested in nursing. But the midwife had a feeling before she came back over that something just wasn't right. We had been communicating before that. And then at the 24 hours, we checked his oxygen levels, which is normal to do. And his were at 70. And so as much as looking back, I now can see like all of, him not eating or him not crying or not waking to eat were things that, that my midwife was picking up on, that I was like, well, this is strange, but here's my perfect little baby, and so when his oxygen was low, we automatically checked everybody else. I was like, this just can't be right. Look at these things. He looks normal and healthy. And so then we're like, no, something definitely is up. My other kids were already in bed. It was like 9 p.m. And so we decided everyone is asleep, but something isn't right with Gideon. We better go into the ER. So a friend came over to stay with my other kids who were sleeping. We go into the ER. There was a really excellent doctor who wasn't, sometimes in my experience, you can go in and everyone's really worked up and it's just wild. And while the team this doctor was super calm and level-headed. And he was like, I see the same thing as you. I see a baby that doesn't seem to be in distress, but his oxygen is low for being 24 hours old. So something isn't right. We're going to admit you. And so I am not crazy about hospitals, and I wasn't before that. And so to hear I just had this baby, my body is going through a lot because I just had a baby, and here we are in the NICU finding out what's going on. And it took a long time to even realize what was wrong. Why was his oxygen low? We learned in that moment that there was something wrong with his heart, but it would really take 2 weeks to learn the extent and how serious his heart defects were. It was just a whirlwind. Like, we're like, something's wrong with his heart. Is there something wrong with his lungs? He was intubated. He had a feeding tube, all in this really short time. And so it was just, and even by the next morning, we had transferred to a bigger hospital that was over an hour away. My husband went home. It was just, my kids, my girls went to sleep with a brother and then woke up with no brother and no mom at home. And so that was just a lot. Yeah. And so it was just shocking. So we learned a lot in a really short period of time. I say, looking back, I am thankful that I didn't know prenatally about all that was going on with Gideon. I've met some other parents and even now I meet other parents with his same diagnosis and heart issues, and they're just so worried. And I can't blame them. I would have been so worried to know too. And so I'm thankful that I could go throughout my pregnancy and just enjoy being pregnant. I had a really beautiful and calm birth, and we had a whole 24 hours at home with our family of 5, and that my girls could love on him and just be sisters. And it was just, I'm so, so, so thankful for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so after that, we met a really amazing cardiologist when we transferred to the bigger hospital that was an hour away. And his heart defects are Tetralogy of Fallot, Pulmonary Atresia, and MAPCAs. MAPCAs are extracollateral arteries your body creates when his pulmonary artery, which supplies blood to your lungs, is closed. MAPCAs are really rare. Only about 50 kids in the world a year will be born with them. And what's unique about MAPCAs is that every single person with MAPCAs know their MAPCAs are all different, connected in different spots. They have different amounts of these MAPCAs. And so none of their hearts look the same. So there's one surgeon in our country at Stanford. His name is Dr. Hanley, and he really he pursued this and is able to do his best at repairing these hearts and rerouting all of these extra MAPCAs. And so luckily the cardiologist we met trained with one of the lead doctors
And
there.
Where do you live?
We're in Northern Virginia.
Okay. Got it. So, okay. That's good that you had someone to access, you could access someone there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I don't believe in coincidences. And so that was just another thing that we just happened to meet this doctor who trained with another doctor literally on the other side of the country and knew about these MAPCAs. We've met so many doctors since then. And I can't tell you one other doctor that's ever heard of MAPCAs.
Wow. So you went from trying to stay away from the hospital system and the medical system to almost overnight getting really immersed in it. That must have, how did that feel for you? I mean, you obviously very intentional, experienced mom and really high intuition, which I think is so interesting. I hear that a lot from parents. It's like, but my instinct as a parent kicked in and I knew something was wrong. And so is that related at all to you? Like, how do you relate your maternal instinct to how you advocate and stay in the medical system?
Yeah, so it's been a big journey of mine. Really, we avoided the modern medical system, most of the time. And so I would say, I would have told you that I had a lot of anxiety revolving around the medical system before that. And then all of a sudden I find myself living in the hospital for 6 months. And so it's been such a learning experience for me. I think that what I've learned really, touching on intuition is just that it's so important to be a team with your medical providers and to view myself as a parent as just as vital of a part of that team. And so sometimes providers and doctors and specialists can be so overwhelming and intimidating. But when I just remind myself, he is my baby. And even when it can feel like he's not my baby because everybody else is doing all the things for him, he is my baby. And I play an important role in his care. And it's my job to be his voice and his advocate when sometimes, everyone has his best interest in mind, but sometimes remembering that he's a person is sometimes lost. So I think it's given me an avenue to use my voice to advocate for him more. And while I knew that was important before having Gideon, I really had no idea how important it was for parents to speak up for their kids and be their voices and be such an important, vital role of that medical team.
Can you think of a time where you were invited to be a part of the care team, where they sought your insight? Do you have any, I'm sure it's hard to pull a specific experience, but if you can just kind of explain what that scenario was and how they included you.
So one particular time I can think of is Gideon often reacts in really unusual and unexpected ways. They'll do a surgery and they think it went well, and then he'll be on ECMO. Or they do, he's been intubated for a really extended time and he's hard to get extubated. One time, I can think of 2 times really that I'm trying to decide which one is better to share with you guys. So Gideon had been intubated for a while, probably coming up on 4 weeks at that time. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen in that cardiac ICU is we try to wean down on all of his meds, wean down on his sedation so that he's awake and wanting to breathe on his own. And then they extubate. And Gideon hates to be intubated with everything in him. He hates it. And so when he's awake and intubated, he is fighting the machine and then will not breathe. And so it just ends up looking like a terrible situation. And doctors will think, well, he just can't breathe on his own and just don't have very much hope for him. And this last long period of time that he was hospitalized, he was intubated, and we went around, it's like a merry-go-round of trying to wean him down on meds. And then he gets really angry. He gets delirious. We can't extubate him. And so all the meds get turned back up. And so he's really sedated again. And so this last time, they just did not have very much hope for him that we would be able to get him extubated and that he would breathe on his own. And this one doctor, I just said, in my gut, I know that he can breathe, but what he doesn't like is to be intubated. I said, is there any way that we can do this without him being awake and knowing that he's intubated? Is there any way? And I just kept asking, and everyone's like, no, this is what we do. This is what we do. We wean them down on meds, and then they have to wake up, and then they want to breathe on their own. And I said, there has to be another way. We had a day that was the absolute worst day, and all of his meds got turned way back up, all the way to the top. And finally, this one doctor changed teams, and this doctor said, there is something we can do. We can try this medicine that they use in the OR, and this is really risky. And we can give him this medicine and wean down all of the meds really quickly, and then we extubate while he's still sedated. And he said, this is really risky. Either your son will breathe, or he's just pretty much, he's not going to make it. And gosh, making a decision to say, I really believe that my son can breathe. I believe he can breathe, and I believe what he doesn't like is being intubated. But this doctor believed us and believed in Gideon. His primary cardiologist thought that we were absolutely crazy for trying this. And I was like, this is what we need to do. I just know it. And so it was probably the most stressful day that we've had in all of our time in the hospital. And so we gave him this medicine. We weaned down all of his meds. And then later that day, they pulled the tube and he breathed. And
wow.
He breathed.
Wow.
And it was just like,
you knew it.
I just knew it. I just knew that he needed that tube out. And I knew he didn't like meds, and that he didn't want to be awake with a tube down his throat. And he had spent a lot of time like that. And if they hadn't valued my intuition there, and if they hadn't believed me, and I also think if I hadn't been so involved up until that point, by that point, they trusted us. They trusted my husband and I that we knew what was going, they trusted our judgment there. And they were willing to make this really risky call to allow us to try this. And it worked.
That's amazing. I mean, there are so many elements to that story, right? It's like the power of your voice, the power of an individual doctor who is willing to say, okay, you've been asking and this is standard protocol, but there is this other thing that we can do. I feel like it's such a testament to the power of collaboration if you can set that foundation of trust.
If you have ever wondered where you could get those cloth dolls that Child Life Specialist use with kids for medical education or sending home to siblings or to draw on for therapeutic activities, then you don't have to wonder any longer, because our friends at Smile Makers have decided to now sell these amazing cloth dolls for a very affordable price. I know that when I was in the hospital, I would have to rely on a volunteer network to then give us the dolls, which was really nice, but I had to wait a lot of times. Like I would need a doll now and I wasn't able to get it. So this is a great place to be able to go get your procedure dolls at smilemakers.com. And y'all, they have 3 different skin tones for these cloth procedure dolls. In addition, you can actually buy a procedure doll prep bundle that comes with fabric markers. This is a fabulous way to do your medical teaching, to help siblings feel involved, to get kids creative, to do a lot of teaching about different diagnoses. And so go to smilemakers.com so you can get your cloth dolls as soon as possible before they run out. And when you go to that checkout to get your cloth dolls, also type in OnCall20 and you will get 20% off your entire order. So not just the cloth dolls. So if you get a bundle for Child Life Specialists, if you get a piece of furniture, if you get one of their really cool toys and prizes, or you order a large sticker order from them, OnCall20 gets you 20% off your whole order. That's smilemakers.com, code OnCall20 to get 20% off.
One of the things, in my own experience, I think one of the things that's surprising is what I'm hearing from you too, is how much you are a decision maker for your child, and like, where do you switch on and where do you switch off? And so my question for you is, how do you get the information you need? You have your trust, but you have all these other elements that are going on with your child. So how do you kind of sift through your own decision-making process, and how do you handle your own stress?
I think for me, all of dealing with it, it helps for me to try and be as knowledgeable about it as I can. Learn, every single day, whether it's at rounds or at an appointment once we're outpatient, write down what they're saying, ask questions there, and then still write it down, and then try to sort of sift through everything to better understand it. And I think that's really the most helpful thing. I think for me, it's a way of coping with my anxieties, to try and understand and control what I can in that situation. But it's been so useful to be part of the team and know what they're, understand what they're saying. And then for me, I kind of take it and then I repeat it back to them. I say, am I understanding this correctly? And say, this is what's going on. Is that really what's going on? Is that what you're seeing too? And that's been helpful for me, both to make sure that I'm understanding it. It's not my anxiety taking it and blowing it out of proportion. And I've been able to learn a lot through that. And so, that kind of helps me juggle it, and the anxieties of it all is just talking it through with specifically straight with the doctors.
I think that's great advice. You're literally, so people who are listening, try the strategy of the provider tells you information, and it's called teach back. You teach back to them what you've learned. And a lot of healthcare providers are taught to practice that. So the fact that you already innately do that is amazing. So I just hope that any parent listens this is a really easy thing you just put into your practice today, whether you're at a well check or an MRI, or no matter what it is, you're just recognizing that what they've said and you're translating it into the way that you understand it, and they can confirm or they can adapt. And that really is that collaboration part. So important. But, I got to know you, Michelle, because I had posed a question about a rehab experience and what it's like to be in a hospital setting for the long haul. And both of you have that experience. And so, Sehreen, I didn't know if you had any questions for Michelle about what her experience was like, or what you guys can kind of compare into what you've been through the long haul experience, and maybe how it relates to your kids at home too, and balancing that.
Yeah, I feel like the inpatient pediatric rehab, that's such a unique experience that you don't know until you actually go through it. I think one of the hardest parts about it was kind of the social aspect for both me and my daughter. And I wondered, how did you kind of make community with other people around you or the team and the staff and other families there?
That's a good question. It's so hard to be inpatient for so long. It's like the outside world just stops, and then that's it. The hospital, where you don't go outside very much, and it is in 12-hour shifts. It's strange. It's like a whole different world. For my husband and I, when we're inpatient, we each do 24 hours. I do 24 hours at the hospital and then 24 hours with our other kids, and then we just swap every day. And luckily, he's had a job and coworkers that have allowed us to do that. For me, inpatient, I just really jump all into all the cares of my son and learning about it. When I'm there, I'm fully there. So I feel like the people I talk to are the nurses and the therapists and the providers. And I'm very much an internal processor when things are really stressful. So, you know, I don't really need to process with them when I'm in that situation. I'll just take it all and then process it after in a different form. So when I'm there, it's just like hanging out with all those people and talking about them buying a house or them getting dinner after work. And I'm like, well, I'm eating hospital food again for, you know, a very long time. And then, but what's difficult for me is when we're inpatient for so long, then I leave and I'm at home with my girls, and it's hard for me to not be super controlling when my husband is at the hospital and needing to know every single detail of what are they doing? What did they say? Why are they doing that? Why did they change that dose? And so turning off when I'm not there is the hardest part for me. You know, so when it comes to having kids at home, did you have one kid at home?
Yeah, I had my older one was with my husband at home in New York City, and I was with my younger one in New Jersey. So we were kind of full-time split into two.
So when I'm at home, when we do things to try to connect with hospital life, it's either we do things to either find some sense of normalcy during that, even though it doesn't feel normal. You know, going to the parks and going out, still doing school, or we'll do things like if he's having a heart procedure, we've cut out and made like sticky hearts and stuck them to all of the windows in the house. And we're just like sending all of our love. And then we're passing by these hearts. They helped. Or we've spent a small fortune on therapy books and things about like the invisible string or the color monster, and exploring all of these. The books have helped my kids a lot because I can't say that I'm an incredibly emotional person. Before all this, my husband would tell you the things that I feel are like happy, sad, hungry. That's it. Tired. And so now we have so many feelings that I've had to learn about and helped my.
I love that.
It's so much we learn, like as we teach our kids too. We're like, oh, is that what that feeling is?
And so children's books, even for, you know, my oldest is 8, even when they're kind of more childish, have really helped her and given them vocab, like the vocabulary for it. and given them these ideas that it's okay when we're apart and we're not the only ones that have experienced this, even when it's really isolating.
Yeah, I think there's a loneliness factor to it. Like, I just went back to the hospital yesterday, the one that we were hospitalized in, and it was like very overwhelming, and I definitely felt some PTSD. But there was another part of it that was like, oh, here people saw us, right? Like, we had the attention about what the issue was at hand. And sometimes in like my normal real life, I don't feel that either. And so it's this kind of invisibility that you're different in the real world, but in the hospital, you're not different. It's a kind of tricky balance of things. I love that you talk so much about how your feelings kind of changed, because I think Katie and I were talking about this too. Like, you change, you as a person change, and what changed in you to yourself and to the outwardly world when Gideon went through this? Like, it sounds like you found your voice, but like, what else have you noticed about yourself that is almost unrecognizable to a previous version of yourself?
I love this question. It's such a good one, Sehreen.
It is a good question. I think, I don't know I don't know that there's a word for it, but I think that I've always been a person that wanted to bring change, but maybe didn't know the best way how to bring about the change. And so I love that you're creating something. I think the thing that's changed the most about me is that I just see how powerful, like how much influence we can each have. And so, just in our small little bubble, I can see that how talking to the doctors and therapists and coming up with ideas actually impacts his care. And even, the therapy that we have at home, or medications we try, or, things like getting breathing tubes out, or trying different things. Before, I would have maybe taken in everything a doctor said or a therapist said. I would have taken it in, and internally I would have said, I wish we could try something different, or that's maybe not what I would do. But the biggest change now is that I'll actually tell them, and not like mean, not like telling them what to do, but more like collaboratively, what do you think about this? Or, I like that idea, but I would maybe do it this different way. Whereas before, I would have just been like, it's fine if we just do what they say. Like, they know what they're talking about. They're the expert. And I still do think they know what they're talking about and they're the expert. But now I think that my voice has more value to it. And I just trust that I do know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about my own kids and our experience.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's like that voice has always been in there, and now you know how to use it. And I've heard from other parents too, that actually translates not just in the medical situations, but maybe in a conversation with your mom, or when in friendships and other relationships. You're like, wow, my voice matters. And, I sit amongst the smartest people in a medical team, and they listen to what I have to say. And it's important. It can be really empowering. I wish that we could stay on the phone with you and learn so much more about your experience. But as we close, I would love to just hear a little bit about Gideon and what type of kiddo he is, what kinds of things he likes to do with his sisters, and just a little bit about him as the sweet little guy he is.
Yeah, Gideon is a fighter. His Gideon Abel literally means warrior breath. And it's so powerful to us because we didn't know, what his story looked like before he was born. And that was his name that we had for him before we found out. And so every day, he loves to move around, but he doesn't move around like us. He'll scooch around on his back, or he wants to use his legs. And so seeing him work so hard in things that I definitely took for granted is really incredible. He loves to go outside. He's nonverbal. So my background as a sign language interpreter has just been really incredible. So he'll sign outside, and all day long he's signing that he heard a motorcycle, he heard a cop, here's a car. He loves bubbles. He really loves motorcycles and cars a lot. All day long he'll say he hears them. He loves baths. He loves when his sisters carry him around. He loves blocks. He's happy every day and just smiling and taking it all in. And I can't say that was a quality that I had before I met Gideon. Is just, appreciating every, like it lights up his world when a motorcycle drives by. And, those are just such simple things, but they bring him so much joy. I wouldn't say that he loves doing what his sisters do, but he loves to be included in however he can be included. And so it's really incredible to see him take simple things around him and just turn it around to be something that makes him so happy.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and your family story. It's so beautiful to hear. I know I feel like children are so kind of underestimated in our culture. And I learned so much from parents like you and kids just having the honor of bearing witness to stories. And so it was such an honor to hear yours and to learn from you too. So thank you so much for doing that for us. And as a fellow Northern Virginia-er, it's also especially nice to meet you because I grew up there.
Well, so thanks for having me. It was so nice to meet you and just share our story and what our experiences has been. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. If people want to follow along with you on social media, are you active there, or how can people kind of get in touch and follow along with you and Gideon?
On Facebook, we are at Gideon the Brave. And on Instagram, we're at Gideon _the_brave and the number 1, Gideon the Brave. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes page so people can find you. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.